It would be remiss of me, Dave Sharma, not to ask you about current domestic politics at the moment. I'm sure it hasn't escaped your attention.
I didn't expect anything less.
I didn't. I thought so. Now, are you surprised by these revelations that Morrison gave himself secret portfolios?
Look, it's certainly unconventional and unorthodox. He's made some explanations for it. To me, I mean, look, there's well-known systems within, well-known procedures in place within the Westminster system of government for continuity of government. And I'm not convinced that these sorts of extraordinary arrangements were necessary to ensure continuity of government. There are always systems in place where if a minister falls ill or a minister becomes incapacitated, someone else can be sworn in as minister quite quickly. And I don't understand why those normal procedures were not followed in this instance. I've read Scott Morrison's justification for it. I accept the good faith of his rationale, but these were rather unusual things to have done, and I think the public deserves an explanation at the time as to why they were being done.
You accept the good faith of his rationale. I'll tell you what, a lot of his former colleagues are not as forgiving. What do you think this says about his character, or does it say anything about his character, how he ran government, how he ran the election campaign?
Well, look, I think it's important to be clear, though, here that there's no evidence or suggestion that he abused these powers or even indeed exercised these powers, except for one decision concerning an offshore oil and gas licence here. So it's not as if he's tried to, appoint his horse as consul or something like that. I think we need to keep it in perspective here. But I would say that it seems unusual that it was only Greg Hunt, the health minister, who was advised of these arrangements, and the other ministers who were very close to him and exercised their portfolio responsibilities were not aware that there was another portfolio minister in charge. And I presume the departments themselves who provide advice to these ministers and seek decisions from these ministers were not aware either. And that's it's a rather unusual situation. I don't think there's a particularly good explanation. Unfortunately, I don't think it helps Scott Morrison's legacy, which I think in many respects is a positive one, but I think this one requires some explanation.
There's been lots of analysis as to why you did lose the seat of Wentworth, and I'm sure there will be more once that actual formal review is completed and we just don't see leaks. Given that we have seen some of these leaks, though, and people speaking anonymously about it, I think it's fair to ask you what you think went wrong.
Oh, look, I think there's, the campaign itself, we ran a pretty good campaign within the constraints that we had, I think. Certainly there are things we could have done better, but the biggest fundamental feature was the national picture. I mean, the government was unpopular. It's not controversial to say that. It's not exceptional to say that. Scott Morrison, as the Prime Minister, did not poll well in my seat. And I think, to be honest, we had become, as Liberals, too closely associated with some of the Nationals and the LNP figures in the party whose views do not resonate well in seats like mine. And we'd failed to distinguish our brand. And I think that's really what hurt us. I mean, the number of times people tried to link me, and I'm a different person obviously, but to people like senior Nationals figures or Scott Morrison or Barnaby Joyce, that was the main attack line against me. And people, I think, voted with a national view in mind that they wanted to change the government.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting this week. Allegra Spender's brother is funding a Liberal women's network. He is a Liberal, and I guess he essentially thinks that some of these Teal candidates should never be Teal. They should have always been Liberal. What do you think about that?
Well, look, I think I'm not aware of that story, but that's good on him. I mean, I'm always supportive of trying to make sure that the Liberal Party encompasses and encourages people from all walks of life to put their hands forward for elected office. But I just make the point that if that was indeed the desire of the Teals, they've got a pretty strange way of going about it, because the people they targeted and successfully targeted were all Liberals, were all at the progressive end of the Liberal Party, and what they've succeeded in doing is getting all those people out of Parliament. Now, is the Liberal Party better off as a result of that or not? I'd suggest not. and I think is governance in Australia better off with an opposition that is less representative of Australia as a whole? Again, I'd suggest not. So if that was their purpose, then I don't quite get why they weren't targeting seats where they found the Liberal sitting member and his or her views to be particularly offensive, but instead they targeted quite the opposite.
Now that you're outside of politics, what's your view? Do you have enough time between being in Parliament and having a break to kind of see how broken or otherwise it is?
Look, I'll certainly make a contribution to, the lessons learned after this election loss, and I've made a contribution to the review that Brian Loughnane and Jane Hume are undertaking, and I'll continue to make a constructive contribution to the direction I think the Liberal Party should be going in. Whether I've got elected office though in my future or not, which I think might be the question you're getting at, I'm really not sure. I'm not ruling it out, but I'm also not ruling it in. I'm going to get on with my life. It was a privilege to serve Wentworth for the term that I did in Parliament, and I've always enjoyed public service. So I'll find a way to continue to contribute, but quite what the vehicle is for that, only time will tell, I think.
Yeah, 3 times might be a charm, Dave Sharma. It's not like you haven't worked for the first 2.
I have contested 3 elections in I think 4 years, all of them tough. So I'm glad for a break right now.
Okay, Dave Sharma, great to have you back on the show. We'll see you soon, no doubt.
Thanks so much, Laura.